been taken for granted, and primarily the black community is at fault in my estimation in that regard, simply because on one hand we're giving one party our vote because they've successfully gone about the business of convincing our community that the other party, the Republican Party, is completely against the interest of the black community. And as a result, we've been very transparent in our support. We've bought it hook, line, and sinker. We look at the Republican Party. I'm not talking about every single one of us, of course, but vast majority of black Americans look at the Republican Party as the enemy. We look at the Democratic Party, even tacitly, as our support base. And as a result, we are very transparent in our support for them. So because of it, they have a license to take us for granted. The Republican Party has a license to summarily dismiss us because they believe they'll never get our vote anyway. And then we end up finding ourselves devoid of any kind of representation whatsoever because nobody is really competing to garner our vote and our support. So I said what I said because I wanted folks in my community to stand up and recognize that if you go to a house or you go buy a car or whatever the case may be, you don't just see something you want and say, I want that. Tell me what the price is and I'll pay for it. Somebody has to flatter you in order to garner your dollars and your support. I think the same should apply to politicians who represent us. The black vote has been taken for granted, and primarily the black community is at fault in my estimation in that regard. Simply,
Yeah, man. So Stephen A. Smith, I don't always agree on this guy, and he's a
I
damn
would say
sports
outside of
commentator,
sport,
and he's hitting the politics right on the fucking head.
he really is. Outside of sports, usually I do have some pushback. Not that he's all the way wrong all the time, but you know, I used to have problem with how he actually handles a certain situation. But this right here, I have to just pretty much just sit back and I'm gonna applaud him on that because that is so true. And I'm, you know, even not to just tell people, oh, they should vote opposite of how they've always voted, but
They should
you need to
expect
at least
them to earn
need
it.
to
They need to.
reconsider how you've been supporting some of these people so that you can actually benefit from your vote because that's
Yeah,
the whole purpose.
if they feel like they have your vote already, no matter what, then what is the reason to do anything to advocate for you?
Yeah, Joe Biden can
What's
come
their
out there and say,
motivation?
well, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. I mean, they can say stupid shit because as if you know you weren't just as silly as y'all have always been, or to some extent, you know, because I ain't gonna you know I don't want to really be offensive to anybody, but I think for the most part we've just given credit to people for lying to us because they're promised things they know that they're not gonna get or could never get, just so that you'll continue voting for them so they can be in their office. But
Every other group they have to offer concessions to
mhm,
get their vote. You know,
yes,
it's like the only group that they can pretty much guarantee. And then that voting block is so important to Democrats making it like they wouldn't make it if it wasn't for that block. But
yeah,
they don't give anything for it, and they take it for granted. They you know, and most black folks, you can't tell them nothing. Like their brain is not freaking trying to hear it. It's like
but
I've
they
been
don't
voting
realize
Democrat ever since I was
all
no
my
longer a slave.
yeah,
As
and
soon as I
yeah,
came
you know
out
what
of
I'm saying.
slavery, I was voting Democrat. My grandpa
I've
voted Democrat.
I've
My
been put
daddy voted
I've been
Democrat.
voting for the very people who was trying to keep me enslaved. They don't realize that that's exactly what they're saying.
Like, you can't tell me nothing different. I ain't voting for nobody but no
Look, man, look,
Democrats.
look.
Everybody in my family vote Democrat. It's a
I voted for
tradition.
I voted for Massa even when he wasn't whooping my ass.
I have voted for him so he could whoop my ass a little less. So you
You,
going on and go do what you want to do, and Massa gonna whoop you hard.
bruh.
Oh my
And,
god.
but the Democratic Party, if they actually stood for what they said they did, they would be worthy of our votes. but they've utilized and like because I mean these people are strategic. Like I mean these are some super smart people, and they knew from the beginning. Like even back as far back as it was the FDR or whoever it was. No, who was it that said that they was gonna have black people voting Democrat for the rest of their life for the next 200
No, for the
years?
next 4 generations or something like that. Who was that? Fuck. Who was that? It doesn't
Well,
matter. It doesn't matter who it
yeah,
was, but
whoever it was, it's like they made a concerted effort because
it
they
worked.
knew what it would take to do it, and they did it.
It worked, and it's still working.
Yeah, and they don't realize. Like my whole thing is like okay, when people when Democrats say, well, the Republicans don't give a damn about us, I was like, well, because we don't vote for them. Like if we were voting, like I think it would be a totally different thing if we had more support. If even if half of us or 30% of us would vote for them sometimes or whatever, they would have a different approach than the Democrats do. Because I don't think, like, I just don't think that they're either one, are necessarily inherently racist, like they try to say. Especially, the Republicans get sold, we're told that the Republicans is the racist party, which I see it the opposite way. But either way, my thing is that both of them would have to fight for our votes and actually do things that's going to benefit us if there was more of a balance between us that said, okay, yeah, I'm going this way, I'm going that way. We're not a monolith, so I don't expect everybody to vote one way, but it looks like we're a monolith.
Yeah. They treat us that way. Um, I'm taking this class this semester. It's called Black Liberation Theology. It's a weird little mix of words there, and freaking religion is mixed up in there. And anyways, it's interesting. I just needed to take a like a philosophy class, and I figured this class will be easy. And I think it is going to be easy, but that's the real reason why I took it. I ain't gonna lie. But it came up in the class where we was talking about how the Constitution, they did the 14th Amendment for that granted African Americans the right to vote, but it was another 100 years before Black people could actually really exercise that constitutional right. You know, they had a bunch of things that would deter Black people from voting. So it wasn't really until the Voting Rights Act, I want to say 1968, where that kind of changed. So, you know, that wasn't that freaking long ago. Let me read the comments right here. Every day is Juneteenth posted this. It says the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, 1868, granted African Americans the right of citizenship. However, this did not always translate into the ability to vote. Black voters were systematically turned away from state polling places. To combat this problem, Congress passed the 15th Amendment in 1870. Yet states still found ways to circumvent the Constitution and prevent Black citizens from voting. Poll taxes, literacy taxes, fraud, and intimidation all turned African Americans away from the polls. The 1965 Voting Rights Act prohibited the state from using literacy tests and other methods of excluding African Americans from voting. Since that time, Americans have consistently received the majority of Black votes. According to Pew Research Center, Black non-Hispanic voters represented 17% of Democratic voters in 2022, while 1% of Republican voters were Black. Additional sources: Library of Congress, Kaiser Family Foundation 2022. Some African Americans, like Stephen A. Smith, think that Democratic Party takes Black voters for granted and that the Republican Party doesn't try to at all to win their votes. So that's it.
What, who's gonna like? Let's just look at this from a business standpoint, because that's how I have to look at things. If you have something that benefits you 1%, you have 1% benefit, and you have other categories. Let's just say that equals up into 99%. Some that might be 45, 30, 20, 17. Like, you're gonna spend more time on those things that ranks more in the 30, 40, those the ones that's ranks higher than the
Yeah,
one that's 1%. So it's
right.
not like, that it doesn't mean that they don't care about it, but it's kind of like, okay, why am I giving extra effort to someone, this 1%, that really, like, whether I had them or not, it changes nothing.
Yeah, and that's fair. Let's read some comments. Amanda Seals commented on this. She said, I hate this argument. Yes, Democrats take the black vote for granted. Also, there are zero Republican black policymakers, so please stop with the false equivalencies. It's like she's making the argument
That's
to
not.
go ahead and continue to vote Democrat.
Yes,
Like,
and that's
I
usually my
mean,
problem. That
I
that's
mean,
my that's huh?
there's zero Democratic black policymakers. I mean, there's black people in I mean, there's
No,
none
there
of them
are
that are
no.
making policies for black people. Is basically what I'm trying to say. I mean, they
Well,
might be
see,
a black policy maker, like their skin is that skin tone,
well,
but they're not making policies for black people.
well. Listen, see,
None,
that's where
zero.
that's semantics, because for one, there's no one fighting for black. Like, you know, they can talk about black issues in the news, but when we get to actual laws, there's, like, black people don't exist,
Yeah,
and that's because that's a legal, like a legal status that puts you at nothing until those people who consider themselves black legally change the vision of themselves. That, like, you're never going to get a black law because black doesn't exist in law.
and I
Either
have to
you're a
go back.
human being, either, you know what I'm saying, like, you are a human being, you're just an American. An African American doesn't exist because those two continents don't touch. They don't exist in the same place, so it's an oxymoron. So, like, for people to really understand and to really be more politically astute, you need to read some of these definitions, like actually look them up, whether you look them up in Oxford or Webster, but even like this Black Law, and like there's other law dictionaries that will explain to you in detail what these words mean, so that you can be able to say, hey, wait a minute, do I, because I mean, I can identify as black ethnically, but legally, it's foolish of me to say that I'm black.
I ain't gonna
And
lie.
that's
I like the term black better than. I get your argument. Don't get me wrong. I hear you. But what I'm saying is, I like the term black better than the African American term. And I would also say there are African Americans. They're just not us. And I have to go back to what Stephen A. Smith said, is that it's really our fault, that nobody that the Democrat, we keep supporting the Democrats and then they don't advocate for us. So then it's our fault
yeah.
that they don't advocate for us, because we just keep voting for them. So of course they're gonna not advocate for us. They can guarantee our vote regardless of what they do. So
But
it's
but, but
our
it's,
fault.
it's 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 deeper. But see, that's the thing that I'm trying to explain, is that it's way deeper than that. Is because, like, if let's just say, like, indigenous people, all black people are indigenous to this planet, regardless of what continent, what country, state, wherever you are, you're indigenous. So if you can relate more to realizing, okay, all black people are indigenous to wherever they're from, wherever they, then you can look at it from a different perspective, that you can at least consider yourself a Native American. You can consider yourself an Aboriginal, or somebody who actually has a standing in law.
Yeah, I hear you. Let me read some comments. It says, there's no party that's for us, but let's not pretend that the Republicans aren't explicitly against us. Another
Oh
comment
God.
says, dog, the Republicans in this country are literally erasing
Well,
Black history. They packed the
I,
Supreme Court and now trying to abolish and reverse every major win Black people have had in this country. They don't want us to vote and use gerrymandering to rig the system against us. They just get rid of affirmative action and have outlawed a plan to ban abortion federally across the nation. and y'all posting this S. This is my problem. It's fair to criticize Democrats or any elected official, but when you do it, come with facts. Come with more than a clip of Stephen A. that's at least 5 years old, and come with both sides. It's like anything short of reparations, black people throw their hands up and say, oh, the Dems don't do anything for us. That's factually not true. And the real issue is that outside of presidential elections, black people do not vote. The fact is, that is a fact. And the reason most presidents, whether it be Obama or Biden or the next Dem, can't pass what they ran on for black people, because the Republicans who want to put black people back in chains and end up running either the House and Senate or one of the two, and they block everything. The best thing black people can do is stop getting news from TikTok and IG and go pick up a book. Go read and learn how government actually works before you blame someone. Go learn what promises have and have not been fulfilled, and then come criticize.
All right, you know what? I need to present some facts to whoever that asshole is, because because everything that Stephen A. Smith said is true and will be true then and 10 years from now. Unless of course, there's some changes that's made, but we still looking at it from pretty much the same way we've been looking at it for the last 60 years. But listen. The thing is, I would really like people to consider, because I can't tell you the minds of the average Republican, but I can tell you that they are more consistent with the way that they approach things, and it is from a law standpoint, because that's their job, is that they're supposed to deal with the Constitution the way it exists. So somebody who comes in there, because if we go back to the 3/5 compromise, this was not just black people that fell into this compromise. It was slaves. There was black, white, was Italians and Irish, and all of them of different colors, because Europeans were mixed too, of different, ethnic groups. So the whole thing is that 3/5 of humans, like, okay, was people, the 2/5 that was missing was that you didn't have your own identity or religious belief. So that was the two things that was missing to make you a whole person in slavery. And that didn't matter what your color was. But anybody, because if you really look back, there were people in Congress in the the late 1700s, early 1800s, that were what we would consider black people, but they held the title of white. Why was that? You might want to educate yourself a little more, instead of me just saying it. Like, actually go and read it for yourself, how these black people were considered white. Even George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and a lot of these people that they make pictures of, just like they did Jesus, like he was white, but these were actually melanated people. But a lot of people don't want to hear that, because, oh, they were slave masters and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, there were black slave masters too. So there's things that I think that people need to stop being so childish when it comes to this, is because you're depriving yourself some honesty and truth about our history, the laws, and how you actually benefit in these documents, not because of any kind of race, but because you are an American. Like, we got to get past this bullshit.
Well, I think that the main focus needs to be on class overall. And what this guy's comment makes me think about is like the part where he said that black people, anything short of reparations, they feel like they're not doing anything for them. And I think that's a fair argument, because a lot of black folks, the ones that they feel like they need to have policies that are specifically geared to black people, like black people only or whatever. And like that kind of causes a problem. So, but you have to realize that sometimes you have policies that are being promoted that do overwhelmingly help black people along with other folks. Like, it was a lot of some of the stuff that Bernie Sanders was pushing when he was running for president. A lot of that stuff overwhelmingly helped black people. Like, it wasn't just black people that it would help, but it would. Black folks would be the number one beneficiary of some of those things. It's like the one related to even in recent times when they were talking about uh, for diabetes, the insulin stuff, because type 2 diabetes or whatever, it's a lot of black people who suffer with that type 2 diabetes, and they would
Yeah.
overwhelmingly benefit from those policies that, you know,
Okay.
would price fix um,
I
uh,
get it.
uh, insulin. So
Yeah.
that's the thing. So, damn, it made me forget what I was gonna say. But you know, I also feel like that is a reason why some of these policies didn't get passed or don't get passed, is because the people that do know that those policies would overwhelmingly benefit Black people, and they got a
Well,
problem with that.
well, and to some extent, I would agree, but that the whole thing about that is that there's really like, where does black really exist? Like, it's a falsely made thing. The whole status of it, the class, whatever you want, however you want to describe it, is a
I agree with
false.
that
It's
completely. Like,
false.
and
Yeah.
me studying anthropology is one of the reasons why, even though it had racist uh, origins, anthropology did, but it has grown over time. But the first place I read that race is a social construct was in anthropology,
L-
and I immediately gravitated to it and had to know more. Like I just
l-
got like I was
Listen.
insatiable.
Let
Um,
me let. Oh, I'm sorry. Because I do want to add that a lot of people have to realize, like, all right, do you really believe that o- President Obama, being whether he's from Kenya or not, him having an American wife and two daughters that's American, that if he could benefit his family or people like him with reparations, that he just, that he wouldn't do it if it was legal? Because see, that's the thing. Like, we've followed a narrative that is untrue and making a certain group of people choose for themselves that they are lesser than anyone else based on, you know, an ideology that just has no scientific edge or proof or anything. And you've they allow you to choose who you are. You decide who you're going to be in this world, how you're going to be represented. All these things is your choice, and it's not their responsibility for you to teach to tell you who you are. It's your responsibility to know thyself. And when you choose to look past that and not find out that your existence goes way past any type of class or status or whatever legal, like there's this, you're much a way above that. But until you can see it for yourself, they're not going to respect you to do anything for you on a individual level or as a group. So that's where responsibility comes in, as just being an adult. Because as a child, we have childish ways. We do things, and we know not what we do. But at some point, you've ignored so many times people telling you, "Hey, there's more to it than what you see," and because like afraid of what you might find out, that you don't do it, or you're too afraid to actually go up against the people that you think are so against you.
I,
And most of them are not. They're following the law. Both parties are doing what they're supposed to do, and that is protecting actual human beings. And if you consider yourself black, you have taken yourself out of that equation.
Yeah, so and that's where the thing from the government standpoint, passing policies that exclusively for Black people is problematic. As far as with Obama, I think that he was looking out for a particular class that he
No, what?
belonged to. or whatever.
Mm,
And that's who
well, that's
she
true.
was looking out for. And
Well,
you know, it that's simple as that. And you really can't blame somebody for going at things in that way, you know. And you
well,
know, you
I'm gonna say it like this because I think what I mean because what you're saying, it is true because the people, because he's rich and he has been rich, and regardless of
before he was
the theory,
president.
but yeah, before he was president, the families that he's connected to, or at least that they say he's connected to with his mom and this, that, and the other. All right, I mean, even aside, he's rich now because I mean he didn't get in that position just blanketly. But overall, I would just say that he could have done things differently, and I think that if people understood the symbology of some of the things that he has done and said, because there's historically he has speeches that spoke to the protection of the indigenous people around the world. He actually signed things into law that protected us, but until you recognize that you are a part of that group, you don't know that you're protected by it. And it's not considered black. It's considered indigenous. So if you look up the Indigenous Peoples Indigenous Peoples Protection Act, you'll see that it is talking about you, black, like us.
Yeah,
So, but you have to actually be involved. You actually have to read. You actually have to not just listen to what other people say and accept it as that. You got to actually do some work.
yeah.
But
So I think that what sums up this, and we're going to move on. I think that what sums this up is just taking on that identity of, you know, black, and what goes along with it being like impoverished and unrepresented, and all of this is the problem. You know what I mean? I think that's basically the argument that you're making, is that, you know, you're taking on this identity, and that's
that doesn't match who
it,
you really are.
well, it's not real. It's
Yeah,
artificial,
it's not
and
real. Yeah.
and 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 that leads